A nation under attack by that most fearsome of warriors, nature herself, has allowed one man to step up, to stand up to inexorable fury.
This is going to be a slow-moving process through a wide swath of the country, and millions of people are going to be affected.
The United States of America stands on a razor's edge. But after 4 years of economic gloom and sapped dry by 2 festering wars in distant lands, it took the inexorable winds of superstorm Sandy to blow the perceived cobwebs off Commander-in-Chief Barack Obama. As Sandy coursed through the northeastern United States, one of the casualties was the final crucial leg of a campaign for the presidency. A state of emergency has thrown election dynamics out of gear. Wind and rain washing away the carefully orchestrated, generously funded dance of American democracy.
The devastation is unprecedented, like nothing we've ever seen reported before. And so we need to keep that in mind in terms of gauging our expectations for how quickly this will happen.
I think that it really is a bit of a slowdown in economic activity that can impact various areas of the world and also the entire country. Because right now there's a lot of interest in the economy and economic output and policies that we ought to be doing, and people rely on New York City for their insight.
But the spirit of Irish poet William Butler Yeats rings true again. When there is conflict, there is opportunity, and there is power. Obama has been a wartime president, but his quest to stay in the White House has received a serious challenge. What many believed would be an easy return has turned out to be a formidably fought battle for power.
Your generosity.
But as the atmospherics, both real and metaphorical, gathered speed, and not coincidentally in the country's significant northeast, the incumbent president has been handed an opportunity to show that he's the man in charge. An all-weather president, geared to lead a country through an enemy that cannot be defeated, but simply borne out.
There's still risks of flooding. There are still risks of downed power lines, risks of high winds, and so it's very important for the public to continue to monitor the situation in your local community, listen to your state and local officials, follow instructions. The more you follow instructions, the easier it is for our first responders to make sure that they are dealing with true emergency situations.
The heated debates, the pervasive speculation of a photo finish to the White House now recede as a disaster holds a nation's attention, its emotions and its immediate future. It is in this turbulent climate, whether fortuitous or not, that Obama is being seen to rise above the storm, to make every single day of the last 4 years count.
And while the President Obama of 2012 may not be able to stir up the kind of jubilation that was managed by the Barack Obama of 2008, the change, resolve and hope that he spoke of has still not vanished. Not entirely, despite the debilitating damage done by Hurricane Sandy.
Yes, we can.
Hope. What that one little word did for this man, Barack Hussein Obama, too. Who would have ever thought that an entire political consciousness would awaken on the strength simply of hope?
Americans who sent a message to the world that we have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America.
When the once humble community organizer finally ascended the throne at the White House, it wasn't just America that dropped everything to listen to him speak. This man wasn't just the 44th President of the United States. Here was a man who had the kind of appeal that crossed oceans, mountains, and every other kind of border. A man in whom lay the promise of a better, more responsible world.
That I will be the Democratic nominee for the President of the United States of America.
His resoundingly thoughtful campaign machinery was simple to the point of hilarity, but nobody laughed. Because Obama's every expression was chiseled finely to radiate the most overwhelming sense that everything was going to be alright. It would take time, but it would be alright. Barack Obama's rise to power was a delirious ride, spangled with reassurance and dizzy optimism. But the passage of time was always going to strip away the embellishment.
You know, it's one thing to be a candidate for president, another thing to be the president. So they're very different things. I think once he came to the presidency, Mr. Obama realized that you couldn't just cut and run.
With an in-your-face intellectual persona, President Obama managed to mobilize a voter base with skillful finesse in 2008.
Executives of big financial firms.
And let's never forget, that was smack in the middle of a financial depression and 2 violent wars. He had the plank, he had the misery to work on. Let's face it, once the misty eyes had dried, Barack Obama didn't walk into the control room of a happy nation, and even less a happy world. The departure of George W. Bush had left the world with 2 violent wars that showed no signs of ending. The United States was at war, 2 wars, after 10 years of George W., who fancied himself as an able wartime president. In came a greenhorn, his brow furrowed with righteous idealism. With strident optimism, he ordered his forces to start planning a withdrawal from Iraq.
The first thing I will do as President of the United States is bring an end to this war and tell the Joint Chiefs of Staff to start getting our troops out. Our combat mission in Iraq will end.
In Afghanistan, things are infinitely worse. Obama, who began his presidency with the thundering assurance that terror would be stamped out no matter who came in America's way, now sounds hollow, with a majority of his countrymen now sure that the war is simply going nowhere.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. I can say unequivocally is that both myself and the team that stands beside me are absolutely committed to eliminating the threat of terrorism, and that is true wherever it is found.
His passion was once infectious, and it passed like a virus, making Barack Obama a figure of appeal even in the refugee camps of Palestine. The naked hatred that the dispossessed of the Middle East nurtured for George W. Bush almost magically transformed into a subtle, hope-laced love for this new leadership figure. But Obama has faltered, and dangerously. He may continue to rain down hellfire missiles along the dreaded Durand Line, but the president still signs away billions of dollars in aid and weapons to that most dubious state sponsor of terror, Pakistan. The clarity of vision that he articulated when he began has whittled down to a reluctant and sometimes indecisive leader who doesn't know which turn to take, what decisions to make. The wars ultimately are in distant lands, far from American homeland shores, but the world in general, and the US in particular, was being squeezed by a terrible and stubborn recession when Obama became president.
The most relevant to this year's choice of the American president would be the state of the American economy, which finds itself in a far better shape than would have been the case had the American people followed the counsel of Obama's foes. But the question is that going to be enough to propel America's first African-American president back into the Oval Office for a second term?
His rise wasn't on ambiguous promises. He looked his fellow American in the face and said, "I will save you." He may have been lauded initially for his economic stimulus packages, passing financial regulatory reform, and his high-profile personal intervention to save crumbling old economy companies. But the dangerously ambiguous financial world that President Obama inherited hasn't really changed very much. Not in any way that would matter to those thousands that voted him into the Oval Office.
When we saw the incredible level of excitement the night of the election, and then the incredible level of excitement at the inaugural, it was fairly evident that nobody was going to be able to live up to the expectations raised by the Obama campaign and the idea that we were electing the first black president. But the biggest problem was he got stuck with an economy that was destined not to come roaring back.
However, a general sense persists that Obama and the Democrats in Congress have managed to get quite a lot done despite being squeezed in the Senate.
No one bill, no matter how comprehensive, can cure what ails our economy. So just as we jumpstart job creation, we must also ensure that markets are stable, credit is flowing, and families can stay in their homes.
Obama is sickeningly aware that big setbacks to the Democrats on his watch would be swiftly interpreted as a massive reversal for a politician whose rise up the ranks of the party could only be matched by the promises he made. Because never mind his impeccable skills as a writer, speaker, and persuader, this is one president who may have just lost the narrative. One of the central facets of President Obama's public image has always been his family. His wife and daughters are as central to the idea of Obama as the aura of hope he exuded during his rise. They were there when he won, and while he goes about his morning job as president, the three ladies ensure an enduring and powerful sense of home, of Barack the husband and father. Facets immeasurably valuable in a society where image is almost as relevant as substance.
Barack Obama took over as the first African American president of the United States and walked into the Oval Office and the White House along with his family. For these 4 years, Michelle and the two daughters have been very much a part of Obama's public image, as well as being part of what is here in America called the First Family.
The former Michelle Robinson is not just the First Lady of the United States. She isn't just the President's wife, nothing like the shallow embellishment that her predecessor Laura Bush was. Unlike generations of First Ladies, Michelle Obama has at several points come dangerously close to garnering the sort of obsessive curiosity that her husband once converted into that brilliant one-way ticket to the White House. Far from being a tag-along, Michelle Obama is all about protocol. She's the president's wife, but to a country that adores the image of familial stability, she's the conscience keeper.
She's not as out front and certainly not as controversial as Hillary Clinton was, but she's probably not quite as much in the background as maybe Laura Bush was.
I think Michelle Obama has given us the gift of style in the White House again, something that we really hadn't seen in a really long time. I think that Michelle Obama is our first modern woman First Lady because she is relatable. She didn't grow up with it all. She worked really hard to get where she is. They both did. And we see that they have it sort of all, in quotes. But yet they're still real people. You know, they still ride bikes and wear dad jeans and, you know,
and all
shop at Target.
Here. We pass by them, so everything from cilantro, the baby.
Many here say that Obama as an idea may have lost some of its sheen, but perhaps his time is not over just yet.
President Obama has been a very lucky man, and he knows it. His firsts as president have already passed into the realm of cliché, but that hasn't ever stopped reality from creeping up on what began as a fairy tale ascendance to power. With Which other president could have been awarded a Nobel Peace Prize just for something that was promised and not delivered? Who else could have mobilized such an overarching sense of hope across nations based on a few gritty speeches written no doubt in campaign trailers filled with cigarette smoke? Was the promise of Obama a chimera after all? Was the promise of hope just a party joke? When he made such impassioned appeals for healthcare, was he only half serious? Was the speech about sitting across the table with Iran just a gimmick to spruce himself up as the mature diplomat president?
People still like Barack Obama. Voters, we know from surveys, have a far more sophisticated view of the economy than a stick figure one that might be suggested. Voters understand that this is complicated, that it's long-term, that Obama didn't cause it, that it goes back a number of years. That is what's put him in a position where he's still got an edge moving into this election.
But reality is a monster under the president's bed, and it keeps him awake now more than ever before. Will he deal with it and move ahead, or will he allow it to consume him?
Barack Obama is battling to defend a consensus that has guided several American governments since the progressive era. It is a view that essentially believes and is based on the principle of the Constitution of America, which starts with the word we and not me. It is a principle that says that the success of the government depends on how it looks after its people, especially those who are most vulnerable.
Will Barack Obama's inexperience as a politician begin to show, or will he rise to the occasion and show his country what it really means to be Commander-in-Chief? The idea of Obama isn't over yet, because hope doesn't sink, it floats.